Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth humulite. Learn more from Mind to Market by visiting blackearth.com.
Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Okay, gents, this is the Truth About Ag podcast, distributed under the RealAgriculture Media Network and powered by the Hebert Group of Companies. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we have 4 on today because I wanted the trifecta. Plus, I wanted to be the least useful person on today's podcast. So I have accountant extraordinaire, Mr. Klippenstine, although I'm sure he doesn't like that title. I've got ex-banker / business partner Todd Andries on today, and I have U.S. farmer Rich Bronec, and you are the only one who hasn't been on here before, Rich, so I want a little bit of background for the crowd. Tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, producer on a family farm or diversified operation, raised pulse crops, and I have 1,000 head of Black Angus cattle, so a little bit of mixed farm there.
Perfect. So I'm going to start this a little bit different today, guys. I literally was listening to the Kelsey podcast on the way in today, and they are getting better since Taylor Swift came on. I'm not going to lie. They have some good guests lately. And they always do a couple segments. So the first one I want to copy off them is, for each of you, I want to know what your welcome to the agriculture industry moment was. So what was that moment where you got your new job? I don't even care if it's 5 years into your new job, and Rich, 5 years into farming. What was that? Whether good or bad, what was that welcome to the industry? And I'll start just to give you an idea. For me, I sat in on one of my first client meetings, and the partner I was sitting with literally looked across the table at a husband and wife and said, for the last 5 years, you could have sat on a beach in Jamaica and made more money than the farm has made. And that was my welcome to agriculture moment, of the realization of that $50 an acre in an area that is $100 to $150 an acre rent doesn't work. Who's got one?
I'm going to take a more positive spin on that. My first crop, I went and talked to a buddy of mine, Darren Watson, who's way smarter in business than I am, way smarter in business than most people. And they said, Waddy, I'm just going to cheat off of you. Shoemaker's the best grower I know, and you're the smartest business person I know, and I'm just going to have you guys tell me what crop to grow. So they had me grow seed Kabuli chickpeas, seed Chico chickpeas, and sold them for seed for 80 cents a pound. And we were not blessed with a big bag of profit usually on our farm, and so we were pretty happy with that, with Waddy's advice and Shoemaker's agronomic coaching. So that was my big welcome to ag.
So do you still abide by that and copy people around you? Is that the Dean Klippenstine method?
I haven't had a genuine thought of my own ever. Literally, between my wife and all my smart clients I cheat off of, I haven't had one creative idea in my existence.
Todd, what do you got?
My mind just keeps going to this thing that keeps recirculating on land. So back, I moved to Barhead in 2002, just north of Edmonton, and we were financing land at $350,000 a quarter, and it just disrupted the whole area. Nobody believed they could ever pay for that. It was way too high. And fast forward, 15 years, it's going for $1 million plus in that area. And we just keep seeing that over and over. So as long as I've been in the banking industry for 25 years, that has been the story. So
land has been overpriced since I started farming. Let's be fair. And it'll be overpriced long after I am off this earth, trust me. Yeah. Mr. Bronec, welcome to farming. What was it?
Yeah, so I would have been about 2004 when I came back to the operation, and I'd been in accounting a little bit in the area, and a lot of CRP at that time. Farming was not good, and you shouldn't come back to it. And so it was a little bit counterintuitive to run back to the farm. And I had ideas back then about investments in land, and it's funny how that's all kind of come full circle now, but at the time it seemed very far out there.
Now that you brought that one up, I guess it should have been the year I got married. We built a house on the farm, got married, and only put in 50% of the crop because it was too wet all in the same year. So maybe that should have been the welcome to agriculture moment. I didn't learn though. So, okay. So I'm going to reach out to Real Ag after this. I want this podcast literally titled Fear Sells, Who's Buying? Because that is what I want to spend today on, guys. I've told all four of you, I jumped off Twitter this week because I could not stand it anymore. We are the pessimism that is going through on social right now is ridiculous. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's bumper times in agriculture, but I want a little bit of a focus today on the positives that we're seeing. So 2025, what are we seeing that coming out of 2025 that actually makes us happy we're in this industry? And what do we see as opportunities and those kind of things? And then going into 2026, we can go down the track of fertilizer, cost of production, all that stuff. But let's focus on the solutions. Like, let's focus on what guys we know and guys we've talked to. What are they doing? Let's actually make this educational for some of the guys listening, because we know that stress in agriculture is going to be there. I mean, I mentioned I feel sometimes like I'm a therapist as much as a consultant some of these days, just talking guys down off the ledge a bit. But let's focus on that for today. So, as Christian would say, the shovel, not just the dead cat. So let's run this through. What happened in 2025? There's a positive for agriculture in North America, since I got a U.S. farmer on here as well. Ritz, I know you're in expansion mode, so let's start there, because all I hear about the U.S. is that the walls are caving in.
Sure. Yeah, I think there'll be some opportunities, and there are. We took a 40% expansion this fall on grain, and the margins are not good, but we had kind of been leading up to having that opportunity, and we're kind of patiently waiting for it. So when it presented itself, albeit late in the cycle of, winter wheat seeding, you're able to jump on that. And, it goes back to that mindset of fear is always on the other side, or success is on the other side of fear. There is some fear to margins where they're at, but I'm in it for the long haul, and I believe this is a good opportunity to step in, because opportunities don't always come when wheat is high priced and everything's great in agriculture.
And I would probably sentiment that. I mean, we're running more land deals internally right now than I've ever ran, and this is during harvest. Like, I've never had guys on the combine phoning me about neighbors that are looking to sell. And I mean, you can say that's bad for ag, but it's not like young guys are the ones phoning. I think it's actually the transitional part that we're seeing speed a bit this fall, is that the older guys are actually saying, you know what, wheat's at 550, canola's down. Why do I continue to do this? And you know what? You can call it not good for ag. I think it's great, because some of the guys phoning me are in their 30s and they're trying to find some expansion. And it's not just the consolidated farms eating everything. I mean, that's what guys like to say. I'm running deals for guys that are 5,000 acres and want to go to 10, or 10 going to 15. Like, these aren't the mega farms that we're talking. I'm 100% on board with you. Opportunities, I think the floodgates are ready to open here.
And some of that in our little local area is moving from a cropping system that maybe was just fallow wheat into a next generation that's going to try different crops and things. And we're seeing that play out too. Is when wheat is down so hard as it is, they're just, like you said, the older generation has said, that's it, I'm done with this.
Can he define follow for me? I'm not sure I know that term.
Fellow. So yeah. I'm old enough. I'm old enough. I'm old enough to be an expert in summer fallow. I worked for a farm a couple of years in university, and one of their old landlords literally had to, in the rental agreement, he had to summer fallow it 6 times in the land rent agreement. And I'm just like, it was just an atrocity against topsoil and good husbandry.
How old are you?
Yeah, no, that was when Rich talks about 2004, when the production targets of your grandfather in the 90s, mid 90s, Rich, versus what you want to target for cropping now, and same with Todd, is a lifetime apart. And so that's the positive I'm going to take from this. We need this to happen, Evan, because and I'm not picking on our ancestors. They did a great job, but you have to stay up and the improved technology and capacity we have to grow crops now is better for the land. It's better for production. It's better for everything. And I think these assets need to be in the top tier management's hands, even if they can't be in the top tier management's ownership. I don't know, Rich. I don't like Todd, and I'm super glad Christian's not on the call, so I get a little more airtime. But realistically, you guys have way more intellectual and physical capability than you have to manage more acres than you're ever going to have the financial capacity to own, right? And that's good, because we need this land managed to its absolute peak production, and we see it in our growers today that beat the neighbor by 20% yield, and they don't tell them that because they don't want to make them feel bad, but the capacity of our land is far greater than any of us ever imagined. And as we push that envelope, because even you look at the South Country at the crop intelligence algorithm, I think it was quite off this year as far as yield potential. But to me, that's not a knock against crop intelligence. It means we don't understand the plant as well as we think we do, and its ability to produce crop when certain factors are in front of us. So I love when Rich and talented guys like that and Todd are taking over land that's better for our whole industry.
So does that go against?
And on that, go ahead. On that, Dean, when you say are you seeing, Evan, more sales or is it rentals? Because to your point, our land sales are still extremely high, the highest they've ever been, but those rents have kind of stayed put. So it maybe makes more sense to rent all of a sudden than buy everything.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say this too loud because I'll get hate mail for this one, but the rental market didn't follow the sale market, to be fair. And we're starting to see rents creep up, don't get me wrong, but the dividends on owned land went from, let's call it 3 to 4%, back 10 years ago or 9 years ago or 8 or whatever. And now we're seeing, 1.5 to 2%. So you're right. If we can rent, I want my guys to rent. Like if you are a strong enough farm that you have profitability in the operating company, please take every rental acre you can get. And I'm okay with you bidding higher on rent because it's still half to a third of what a purchase is. And yeah, you don't get the equity uptake, but we've already seen the 10x. And don't get me wrong, numbers are still going up and they could keep going or they could come back. I don't want to speculate on that today. But in the end, rental will make you more return in the farm right now than buying that quarter will anytime.
Yeah, as long as the metrics are there and the equipment is much. Yeah.
Yeah. The only question I had for you, Dean, was does that change the narrative that the price of grain has not moved and yet cost of production is so much higher that farms are having too much trouble with margins when we just sat here and said that they're growing way more quantity?
It is a double-edged sword especially on markets where we are significant enough to impact, right? Like in this Saskatchewan and Western Canada and the Northern Plains, we still are significant wheat growers, but we're not relative to the world as a percentage. Whereas some of the crops we can actually impact, some of the micro crops, chickpeas, lentils, canola. Our geographic area for the three of us Southerners on this call, we can actually affect those markets. but the cold hard reality of it is we're in commodity production, and contrary to those people in Vancouver and Toronto and California and New York who tell us we should have market gardens and sell to the local cannery. We're big acre, low population commodity production, and with that comes you gotta maximize yield and you gotta minimize costs or do what you can to manage costs.
Todd, what's your 2025? What's the positive you're seeing?
I think Dean's going to love this one, but I think one of the positives out there, we talk a lot about the grain margins, but, we're not focused a lot on the cattle margins right now. And I think that that's been a bright spot over the last couple of years. We'll maybe fast forward 1 year from now and see how that looks. But for now, I think a lot of people are enjoying that. And then, I think just, production. I think that, while margins are tightened and probably not where people were projecting them, even though the production is higher, it's still exciting to actually grow a crop in our area, south central, southwest Saskatchewan. I mean, at least there were some bushels there. We're seeing some grain bags out in the fields again this year. And so, I think that just, that does raise some spirits as well when, it seems like there's some bushels to combine in some of these areas that haven't had that. And even beyond, I mean, more hearing stories having across the province of record yields. So.
And I think
you bring a great point, Todd, from a mental health, and I'm not a big mental health guy. I'm kind of old school that way, but it doesn't feel good even if you're really profitable to harvest a 3 bushel lentil crop because you got no rain. That's not good for the spirit, right? Farmers still have this love of producing good big crops on land, and it is way more fun. Even if you make the same money as you would have grown a small crop with crop insurance, it doesn't feel as good. It's not as energizing.
There's an asterisk beside it, isn't there? Like, Dean, you would know my first year that I rented land, I was hailed out 100%, and it was profitable because I had good coverage through SCIC and hail insurance, but it just feels like there's an asterisk beside that profitability.
Yeah, you're right.
The one that I had, guys, is I think there was a need for knowledge. And the big one for me was guys are reaching out quicker, the financial acumen side, they actually want to know the numbers. And don't get me wrong, that goes back to the title, fear sells. But I still see that as a positive, even if it's based on fear. Because guys are actually wanting to know what's going on. They're wanting to know their numbers. They want to know where they're finalizing. They're not just focused on yield. Because anybody focused on yield this year, there's going to be some pain. Because I'm sorry, but a 90 bushel wheat crop at 550 does not yield more than a 70 bushel at 7 or a 50 bushel at 9. Like, we got to quit talking in yields. So guys are actually making that step. Todd, I mean, we were talking the other day on a call. We've had more people reach out for the consulting side than ever before. And our guys who were with us for the last few years, they're sitting on combines reaching out saying, we need to get a fall update done, where usually it's, October, November. They actually want to know where they're sitting right now to market, to when they're buying fertilizer for next year. Their knowledge is power. And we're in an industry where a lot of guys pushed away from that, didn't want to know, put your head in the sand, find out when the accountant sends the statements. Now that real-time data, I think this is the fence, and I think we're tipping over it, which I really like.
That's a question I have for Rich. Rich, I've always been I'm an angry old prick, and I don't like anything. And I hate the Canadian banking industry because it's a cartel. I've always longingly looked at the U.S. where the banking is more competitive. Are you seeing it tighten up in your neck of the woods? Banks starting to trim up on ag a little bit?
That's probably specific to different. I have not seen it in our specific area, but I think maybe on like the dealer financing side or things, I've seen some on that side.
Okay, because I think that's driving some of this stuff. The banks were pretty aggressive at lending in the last 10 years, and we're going to see some of that tighten up. Certainly from my perspective, Evan would have more to deal with that, and Todd has been on the inner working sides of that. But that's kind of driving some of that good behavior, I think, Evan. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. It's funny though, because every time you're on, I get phone calls and text messages from the banks afterwards, because this is exactly where you go. So yeah, you're not wrong.
That's funny.
You're not wrong, and I'm not going to throw any specific banks under, but we are. I mean, it started this year. We talked about it on a podcast, honestly, last fall, was that we were starting to see restriction letters. We were starting to see some of the bigger banks pull back. And you're right, it's a cartel. The top 5 richest companies in Canada are all national banks. Now, we've also said it on here before, and going back to your alma mater, Todd, like the credit unions, farm credit, some of the smaller lenders that have been in agriculture for a long time and didn't just jump when things were good, they're still in our corners. I spent an hour sitting with one of those lenders with a client yesterday, day before, and they're behind them. They're looking at bulge financing for cash flow. They're looking at expansion still. They're not pulling back, but they are cautiously tracking. I want to take a pause from the podcast to call out one of our largest sponsors at The Truth About Ag, Farmer Coach. We have had the largest uptake in the program since its start in 2022 and are looking to have more than 100 producers in for the fall of 2025. We've opened up an additional executive program as our legacy cohort sold out earlier than it ever has in the past, and we are asking producers to reach out for availability. We have multiple new industry supporters this year. Love the industry when they jump on board with education, and they are sending some of their most progressive and young farmers into the program. Reach out to your lenders and your suppliers and ask if they're a supporter, and if not, why not? And lastly, and the most proud we are at Farmer Coach, we are entering our 4th year cohorts, and we have an 80% retention rate with that cohort. The original one has no industry backing. They came because they believed in what we were doing, and now as they enter their 4th year, they have made changes to their operations beyond what I ever thought was possible. So if you're not looking into the program, I ask that you hurry, as seats are filling up, and we want you to figure out your definition of success, and then let us and the other participants assist you in reaching it. The only real question left to ask is one day or day one. Now back to the Truth About Ag podcast.
And just because a banker gives you hell for something, that doesn't mean they're wrong. Like lots of guys guys and gals stretched their balance sheet further than was responsible, and so I'm not saying the banks are wrong in pulling back their horns on some of these aggressive expansions that are where people are out over their skis, as my buddy likes to call it.
Well, and if your bank is opening the book to you, that's something to question. And I don't think guys question it anymore. They were just, oh, you're giving me more financing, I'm going to go buy. You have to be very cautious these days. And this isn't a hit at just the banks. They have HR issues just like us. They've got a whole bunch of young lenders. They've got a commission system based on lending. Let's be fair. We need to be cautious. Their job is to find you money and help you get money. Their job's not to make sure you don't hang yourself with it. And that's where Todd and I have started to find a lot of guys reaching out is they're starting to realize that just because you can doesn't mean you should. So,
And
Go ahead, Todd.
I think, the other thing that worries me a little bit about the banking industry is chasing headlines. I had a conversation with the bank the other day, and they were asking for kind of our view of the industry, and it was solely honed in on canola tariffs. And so, I'm like, did you realize that lentil prices have dropped by 50%? Have you seen what wheat is doing? Like, I think that but they didn't even know that, but because, on the news, they saw a tariff headline on canola. That's where they were focused on. So I think that, I think that's where producers have to understand, their own matrix, what they're doing, their risk mitigation strategies, and be able to have a conversation with the bank, because every story is a bit different, and otherwise they'll tell their own.
I want to ask both Rich and Todd, fellas, if you were had your ideal expansion opportunities come at you, what mix would you be of owned land versus rented? I mean, obviously, we all wish we had a unlimited bucket of cash to buy all the land we farm, but that's not the practical reality for most farms. What would be your mix of rented versus owned in a perfect world on your expansions?
Yeah, I think today it'd be like maybe a quarter owned, and that maybe would have been 50%, 5 years ago. But with interest rates and term debt and so forth, I think we would look to lean harder on rental land just because of that cash flow. And that's really the bottom line is balance sheets are still strong because the equity is still there, but it's really starting to, watch your cash flows now.
Yeah, that's a really good
ability.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because land appreciation doesn't pay off the debt, right? It doesn't write the check. Todd, what's your mix?
Yeah, my mind would go to 50-50, but even in today's world, that's probably pretty tough to cash flow. I don't think I could swing that. And so I'm probably in that ballpark of where Rich is at, around, maybe a quarter kind of a thing of owned, and then rent the rest.
Yeah, cost-wise, Dean, you're probably 3-to-1 on interest, so let's call it 3 purchases for every 1 rent. And then if you actually back in the actual cash of debt service on the principal side, yeah, you're 25% or less, and that used to be almost even, dead strike. So yeah, we're probably even worse than that, to be fair.
But so rather than just, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and maybe at some point we get to choose a little bit about that landowner and that potential maybe buy down generationally down the road, rather than just the highest marginal rent. So maybe that's a discussion as well.
Yeah, well, and what I underestimated early in my career the agronomic the land quality, its impact to your bottom line, and not just on the absolute quality. I've always been a big fan of quality land because that's why we migrated our farm to Wilcox. But I think I underestimated the value of well farmed land for 10 years versus stuff that was brand new to the operation. So one of the things I'm going to push both landlords and tenants is let's start looking at this like commercial real estate, right? Let's do 10-year leases. Connexus Credit Union in downtown Podunk, Saskatchewan, nowhere Saskatchewan, we would never do a 2-year lease on a building, right? They're putting lots of resources and infrastructure and internet and fiber, and they want a 10-year lease with probably a 10-year extension, and then it becomes a solid relationship, a long-term relationship. And I think that's got to start to come into our discussions at the front end of agriculture, because it needs to be there. It's good for the tenant. It's good for the landlord. Now, we might have to get creative on the pricing, because it's awful tough to price 10 years out. But I think we really need to turn our eye towards that, because the mix of the expansions you both talked about, all three of you talked about, and then maintaining the quality, because you see it, Rich. What's your yield? If I bought you a quarter of land that was farmed poorly versus stuff you guys have been doing a great job for 15 years, that doesn't get fixed overnight.
No, to your point, I mean, the lease we just did it has a variable rate. It has a first right of refusal on a re-up at 5 years, because there's going to be grain storage that needs to be built, and that's often the case in our geography. Grain storage is far behind. To your point, making those investments needs to have some kind of long-term deal behind it, and it's setting up for those pulse crops or things that maybe weren't done on that, whether there's residual chemistry or some weed issues, until you get it into the right crop mix for your operation.
Well, the other one, Dean, is a lot of the lenders won't give you the ability to take out loans on a short-term rental agreement. So let's say you had to buy more equipment or you had to put more infrastructure up, like Rich said. Well, on rented land, that's a risk, because if after year 1 or year 2 you lose the land, you can't cash flow that. Like the banks are looking ahead, guys. Let's be fair. They don't hire dumb people. they hire smart people at a university that can actually do some of this in a lot of instances. So you got to, those long-term rental agreements work with your lenders as well, telling them that I've got this locked up and maybe I have to re-up every 2 to 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, but I still have last right and I still have that rental agreement. So if it's going to put me in a bad place to lose it, even if I have to pay a little extra, I still have the leverage. I still have the hammer. So where the bank looks and says, well, you're going to take on all this equipment and infrastructure and you could lose this land. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I'm sure some of your clients, Dean, where you get a whole big parcel, you buy a whole bunch of equipment and all of a sudden they pull it back or you lose it. And now your LPM's too high, your LBF's too high. It just throws your whole income statement out, right?
Yeah.
Forced into paying that high marginal rent because it's an open bid, and now it's unprofitable.
Okay, let's pause and go into 2026, because obviously there's a lot of negative looking at 2026 with fertilizer and some of the stuff we've already talked about. But right now, Rich, if I asked you, where's your head at going into 2026? Like, where do you see some of your solutions and what do you have to do?
I think the solutions for our operation were to maybe back out of wheat acres a bit because of the high fertilizer, and lean a little bit more on the pest crops and some of the things that aren't as fertilizer intensive. That's become a largest part of our budget.
Yeah, I'm probably seeing that too. We've actually started doing some analysis on, and I can't share today, but some of our analysis on grain pricing to fertilizer pricing. And right now is the worst time in the last 12 years for that decoupling. Like, fertilizer is totally decoupled from grain prices. It's almost 80 bushel of wheat to pay for 1 metric ton of urea. And back at COVID, it was closer to 20 to 25. So, I mean, I think part of our strategy is going to be that we're going to start watching the fertilizer to grain price metrics a little closer. And if we get a year where it's in that bottom 40% of the last 10 years or whatever it might be, that's going to be our sell signal or buy signal. And it's fill the infrastructure on the farm, put it in the soil, do some of those longer term applications. Like I think it's changing the way guys are looking at fertilizer procurement, which in the past is just buy it it's summer before or buy it when you seed. Now guys are actually making longer term plans, just like grain marketing. You can grain market a couple years out. They're actually buying fertilizer years out or putting it in the ground years out. Because then on a year like this, you can actually pull back and not purchase at the highest point it's been in 10 years. Like it's changing some of those discussions I'm having.
And I've always been, my friend Christian Hebert always talks about, you always got a forward price. And I call bullshit on that. I think what happens is when prices are good, we should forward contract. And when prices are on the low historic, then go naked and don't price it, because there's like we don't automatically always have to forward price. No, we're relatively new to the grain marketing world because of that archaic thing we used to call the Canadian Wheat Board. It's so absurd. It's so absurd.
It's comment number 2 I'm getting hate for. Keep going.
Yeah, what an absurd concept. If you explain it to someone, they look at you like you have 9 heads. But so Rich, the U.S. grower is far more sophisticated in the grain marketing than the Canadian producer on average. What's your take on forward pricing grain, and where you guys stand on that?
So it's been really helpful to our operation, but I am out of forward sold. So because we have the crop insurance levels that we do, it gives you the confidence to forward sell, and we really leaned on that. But to your point, I mean, the prices that are being offered now, we just don't have it. I'm not making them, and this is the first time we haven't bought summer fertilizer for next year, and the ratio is just terrible, and time is on our side at this point. So we are changing what we've done historically.
And the interesting part is I'm having more of these discussions with guys, Dean, like on the marketing side. I think there's a huge need for an education component here. And I wish we knew more about that side, because that's not my expertise, but like we need more of that education, especially in Canada, over the US for sure. But guys need to realize that when you're selling grain, it's not just the highest price. It's logistically, when can you move it? Cash flow wise, when do you need cash in your bank? Because part of it, and then understanding basis versus futures, like all that stuff. Because for us right now, we don't believe basis is going to move. So we're having the discussion, do we liquidate some of the wheat at this terrible, terrible price, buy it back on paper and try to make some of the futures up later? Because the cash flow is going to affect a lot of guys. Like 2025, if you want to go back, that's going to be the one issue guys got to solve really quick here. It's coming in, the operating loans are due in, let's call it December to February. They got to sell something. You can't sit on it all. And the banks are not going to bridge finance in times when they think margins are bad. So what's the plan, right?
Yeah, Todd, give us your take on that, because you've seen that you've been on both sides of the desk on that.
Yeah, I think, the input financing companies have such a rigid repayment date that becomes a challenge for a lot of producers, where if you have a bank operating line, if you've got some room and space, you can continue to revolve and possibly hold, but there's not an endless amount of cash there either, right? So, but I'm with you. And I think that, that's another element of understanding costs, because I think people will chase 10 cents, but it costs them 15 on their carrying costs, and so I think that there's a lot of factors that they need to look into, and prime isn't 2% anymore. I mean, while they're still historically low, it does add up. And if you're carrying that inventory for 6 months and don't, make a substantial profit on it for the risk of carrying it, or, opportunity on it, then that impacted your cash flow, potentially stress, potentially buying opportunities elsewhere if you've seen some deals and didn't have the cash to do it because you were chasing, a market that just wasn't worth chasing.
Yep. Well, and so Evan's right. We have a historically heavy set balance sheet in our client base. So we're not we've got quite a buffer to the banking stress and pressure of marketing. But the other thing, that lots of the most profitable crops in farms, certainly in Montana, North Dakota, and the 3 prairie provinces, we have lots of our crops are micro commodities, and they're not easily traded on the markets. And so corn, soybeans, canola, wheat, we can go to do a good trading system on those. But with lentils, chickpeas, flax, durum, there's a lot of crops that we just don't have that ability. So that's an extra challenge. I'm not saying it's negative. It's just it's an extra piece that it leaves us even farther behind in the education component because we don't have those options available.
Yeah, yeah, that was, yeah, sorry, to your point. I mean, that was something I had to learn. It was always just sell the wheat. We can trade it on the board. And then as we get into the lentil and chickpea market, contract based, but there's always overages. And what do you do with that? And, and just having some cash flow, some working capital to give you flexibility, I think is a key component to raising those crops.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, we're seeing that real time, Dean, on no bids on lentils right now. And so if you wanted or needed to move, it's just not an option. And even where there are some bids coming out, there's a disclaimer on every single one of them. It is limited quantities available. So there's very little happening there.
Yeah. I think we should, and you haven't heard me say this for a lot of years because the cow-calf industry has been beat up for a long time, but a thousand head of Black Angus calves coming off grass, not a bad way to buffer some cash flow.
Yeah, I am cutting that for 2 years from now when we are having the exact opposite discussion. Just so you.
Well, I know it makes me nervous, but
you're in that game for the long haul for sure. We take it a while, so
yeah, you guys deserve profit. That's awesome. I'm excited because I remember I used to love the cattle industry till I realized how unprofitable it was for us. So I love that times are going the other way on that.
Yeah, and I think the U.S. might have been a little better off on that cycle, but.
Okay, I want to shift gears here. So since I've got Rich, he comes up to the Farmer Coach program quite a bit. He understands the word LPM, and obviously I've got the LPM king on this call. So Dean, what do we do about rising costs? Because John Deere says equipment's going up another 5%, and they will continue laying off employees to make sure that that price doesn't shift.
And there's a whole bunch of people who love to hate what I talk about in LPM, and it never does it fall on more deaf ears than someone who goes 2 mile an hour in a 100 bushel wheat crop, going, "Oh, I need a new combine." Like, this yield did not help my LPM cause. No, all I care about is that people don't confuse it with an investment. It's not an asset. It's a necessary. If all of us could magically have our crop disappear out of the field and into our grain bins, we'd never buy a combine, right? They're only a necessary evil. They're not a pleasure vehicle. They're just a necessary evil. And all I care about, because for sure gross margin matters more, impacts the farm way more. Good crop production can't be substituted. But in $10 a labor farm machinery one way or the other isn't going to make or break a farm. But what I've always thought is if you took and this is not a US versus Canada issue, it's a farm versus business issue. If Rich had a farm next door to him who had a construction company, they would never trade their graders off every year, right? If you went and told the road construction crew that works by your farm that they should trade their uke earth moving equipment, that we call them ukes. I don't know what their actual term is, but earth movers, those big scrapers. If you told a construction company that they should trade those every year, they'd look at you like you had 9 heads. They'd go, "Well, you're an idiot. We run those things for 30 years and we fix the engine and we'd run them again for another 30 years. I just want us to be dispassionate about the machinery, know that it's a necessary evil, and have a capital budget program, not impulse buy. There's no reason we're making decisions of that magnitude on a guy called me and they had a really good deal on them, so I bought 4 of them. That's not the way I want to run our ag businesses.
Oh,
so no,
those demo programs are awesome. Here, I'm going to bring you out the newest toy, and I'm going to let you sit in it, and then you're going to go back to your old machine, and you're going to dream about this for the next 10 days. And do a disclaimer, guys. Dean, since I knew him, I know he's traded up since then, but he drove a Dodge Caravan for more years than I can remember, and my LPM was higher than his, and I was probably still in my 20s. So that's the disclaimer I'm throwing, is he actually lives this. Maybe not now.
I still get beak for the vehicles I drive. Rich, give me your thoughts. Fire away, buddy. You can't hurt my feelings. It's impossible.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have never flipped into any kind of mud deal or never been big enough. We'd never bought new. I bought one new item and, labor's the other side of it. We do fix a lot of things, but we just kind of scrapped and scraped and pulled a lot of equipment out of Canada, and our dealers don't love us, but we just kind of try to get some late model stuff that there's frankly been deals on lately, and try to be self-reliant and getting them to operate and perform for us. And we've got good success in doing that.
I want to take the next few moments to call out another one of our sponsors, Maverick Ag. New look, new team, new location, and new outlook on agriculture. We've spent the last 6 months adding key people and processes to the Maverick team so we can better support the industry in what we see as complex yet exciting times. Our core consultants are the best in their fields across accounting, banking, consulting, and insurance, and we would love the opportunity to show you our horsepower. Some of our legacy products include the core financial product. Are you looking ahead, seeing financial ceilings at every turn? The markets, the cost of production, the banks. We provide a full-fledged projection package that covers your monthly cash flow worries, your bank ratios, your key performance indicators, your cost of production, and your profitability metrics. Fail to plan, plan to fail. Don't go into 2026 without a plan. Number 2, Navigator Strategy product. Do you feel like Groundhog Day is every day on the operation? Are the complexities of managing family, roles, accountabilities, people, compensation, and just the sheer number of decisions you're expected to make becoming a stressor? Are you running the business, or is the business running you? Let our experts sit down with your family and your team and come up with strategies that work. We don't consult on things we've not seen success on in our own operation or those operations that we work with. Let us steer the ship in the right direction. Along with these offerings, we also have other numerous technology, negotiating, insurance, and decision-making products available. Visit maverickag.com for more details. Now, back to the podcast. Well, and I can be open with you, Dean. It's not necessarily the LPM costs that hits me. Like even for us, when we did our first roll into the new and the multi and stuff, our labor power machinery only went up about $1.50 because we dropped a whole bunch of units. But, and there's a but here, our debt service went up because the big loans on that equipment, even though the expense side might not have jumped too much because we got some efficiencies on the equipment, the actual debt and how much leverage we had on shorter term debt, like it's intermediate debt, let's call it 5 to 7 years, that hurts a lot because for that same price, I could have probably bought 2 or 3 times the value in land amortized over 25 years. So it's that opportunity cost that you're losing where I find it hurts more than the other. The cost side I can manage.
But Dean, also to answer that, we've kind of changed since I've been to Farmer Coach and seen what operations in Canada are doing. We moved to 24-hour seating, and that wasn't even a thought I had when I first came back. And nobody's really doing that in our area, or very seldom. So it's how do we utilize that equipment more efficiently and effectively? And the guys actually like it because maybe they were 16-hour shifts before, now they're down to 12 or whatever that rotation looks like. And, so it's helping your labor out as well.
I'm definitely cutting that. That is going to be commercial, so just so you know. Go ahead,
Todd, far away.
Yeah, look, I have this belief that good times in agriculture create hard times, and I think because people lose sight of costs, they and I think that we're going to see that really quickly, and I think that between Dean, Evan, we all work in an area or are connected to an area that's been pretty tough in southern Saskatchewan, and I think those guys in some ways might be positioned pretty well going forward because they have been forced to keep labor power machinery low, and there are areas in the province that were growing massive canola crops at $20, and really padded the working capital, padded the balance sheets, and maybe lost sight of this. So there will have to be some adjustments, and I think that people are recognizing that early to your comments, Evan, around people are starting to watch cash flows. They know they have to get in front of this, and maybe that's a newer concept, or they haven't paid as much attention because they haven't had to.
The other part I'm seeing is, and to jump away from LPM a little bit, but on the LBF side, I had guys working at interest rate risk like they've never looked at it before. And I mean, we're obviously Canada, we just decide we can just keep dropping rates and push a recession. And I won't say that too loud, but I'll say that very loud, is we continue to drop rates even though inflation hasn't moved. That I think is going to construct some really bad things coming forward, especially in agriculture, because when rates drop, and Rich, I've heard you say this before, when U.S. pays more subsidies, all that happens is it goes into land. And in Canada, when rates drop, all that happens is we take out more leverage on land. So what we're going to see is guys do this. And my cautionary tool is we better make sure that guys start looking at some of the fixed rates and stuff like that, because the only way to curb inflation is to increase rates. And with some of the debt leverage we're seeing, the numbers on the balance sheet don't bother me until it's restructure time. Then they bother me because the interest costs. I have a mortgage on my house that I fixed in COVID. It comes up in May of next year. There's 2% more getting added right there. I know there is, even if things continue to go down. And on my house mortgage, that's a small amount. It hurts, but it doesn't kill. On 10 million of land that we restructured during COVID at sub 2 to go to 4.5 today, that hurts. And I think guys don't track that enough. I don't think they track when their loans are coming due and what's that going to do to their interest. That's a metric that we've started tracking because it has caught us in the past and surprised us. It all set us. Here's an extra 100,000 of interest cost on a loan that we didn't realize is coming due and we didn't plan for it.
Well, and even if we go ahead, sorry, Todd, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, like, we talk about marketing grain at different times of the year. Imagine having to market your grain once every 5 years and take the price at that point. And that's, you don't want to refinance, for example, Evan, where maybe you're redoing everything and you're taking the interest rate at that point in time. And that's been a pretty safe bet historically. But what are you renewing into and what are you going to renew into? And how do you structure and ladder some of those? And I think the advice that I would have for people is understand where you're at right now. And if you've got, if you've got debt today that it renews within a very short period of time and a large chunk of it, start to see if your banks will do some blend and extends. Renew early. You can sort of honor the rate you have today, bump it back out to 5 years and start to get those renewing into different periods.
Because that's
Rich.
Throw debt service off, Dean, is that if you haven't calculated that, if you fix your rates 10 years, I'm fine to be leveraged. We have no interest rate risk. We know what our debt service is. We know where our insurance flows. Like there's a whole bunch of risk mitigators to having high leverage. Guys just say guys with high leverage are in trouble. No, they're not if they've done the right planning. The problem is that most don't do the right planning, and then all of a sudden their debt service jumps off the page when a 2% interest increase on their biggest loan comes up. Then you're in trouble.
Rich, you fire away, then I want to chime in on this.
Yeah, in the US, I think it's more common to have 20, 30-year fix. So we're somewhat insulated, right, on interest rates. So we're somewhat insulated from that. And there hasn't been enough land deals since interest rates have went up to really suppress that market is kind of my opinion on it. Because when you do the budget on a new 7% loan on land, it's a big deal difference.
It is a big deal. And even if we're talking about farms that are not highly levered, you guys have heard me rant before about putting money in the war chest, right? I'm a big fan of paying lots of tax, getting that cash in your business, and then put aside into whatever you want to put in the war chest. Whether it stays in whoever your institution is that's managing your money, and whether it stays there as a legacy family asset, or you build up the war chest to attack because what's going to happen is 25 years ago or 30 years ago when Rich's dad or mom was farming, the neighbor might come and rent them a half section and sell them 3/4, right? That would have been a big expansion. And now we're going to have 5,000 acre farms fall in our lap that we're going to have to buy 1,500 acres and rent 3,500 as a turnkey operation. And you got to have the war chest pretty well primed and built to take advantage of those. And if we do that, we're going to have an advantage over the neighbors that are scrambling last minute to have those dropped in their same lap. And so I love the idea of getting ready to take on the $10 million expansion, because those size of opportunities are going to come to some pretty reasonable sized farms, and having your house in order before that comes, I think, is going to really pay off in spades down the road.
Yeah, and I think those opportunities will happen, but it takes a lot of discipline to do what you said, to build a war chest.
And two things with this. Number one, Dean, is you're correct. The $10 million, like I'm running 3 land deals right now, well over 10 million. Like those are going to be a dime a dozen coming on. And that sounds big to a lot of farms. Those are
What is?
big, but those are not the big expansions. I'm seeing ones considerably larger than that as well. Now, my devil's advocate for you is, are you really going to cut a check for your land purchase, or are you going to finance it? Because that war chest is making 2%. And your farm's making 20%. Why are we holding cash? That's where you and I differ, and I think it's a risk tolerance thing.
Yeah, you're entirely wrong. That's just because your math is incorrect. There's a perfect correlation between height and brains.
Please share, Mister. I'm scared of risk.
No, when extra money in a well-operating farm, if I give you, assuming you don't have expansion opportunities, if you were at a properly capitalized operating farm, and I give it more money, it can't make any more profit, right? So if I took my farm that was properly operating, and I said, if I give you $1 million, well, if I give Todd Andries' farm, him and his dad's farm, him and his mom and his dad's farm, $1 million, and said, Todd, go make more money with it. If he was paying off credit card interest, if he was borrowing money on credit cards, or paying super high interest, or wasn't buying the fertilizer he needed in his field because he couldn't afford it, then that operating capital is needed in his operation. But if I give him $1 million and say, go make your farm more money, he'd say, well, I can't, that doesn't make it rain more, Dean. All I'm going to do is pay off 4% debt or buy a term deposit. Then that farm doesn't need more capital in it. So set that aside until there's a good place for it to go, whether that's in expanding the operating business or buying land.
So my question is, why are we only talking about farm assets? Because in my thoughts, if we think farming is the only place that the large scale farms are going to make money going forward, I think we're dreaming. Because the land price is where it's at. I think that 2 million or whatever the war chest is sitting at. Why are we not looking at other businesses? Why are we not looking at diversification, value add? Like we got to act more like entrepreneurs, less like farmers. And I think I'm going to get hate for that one for sure. But in my head, if you're sitting on a war chest of cash making 2% in a term deposit, we should be looking at opportunities, and we should be looking at other things outside of just land, because land is not profitable right now. And if we think the 10x has happened already, which it has, we're buying incremental appreciation now going forward, unless we're going to open the foreign ownership rules, which is not going to happen in Saskatchewan unless it's dire circumstances. My idea is you're sitting on cash, and you when you retire, Dean, you're not going to have 2 million in your bank account. It's going to be in the stock market. It's going to be in safe investments. So why are we telling farms to sit on cash when even?
Sorry, that's what I call the cash war chest, is stock portfolio and investments.
The stock portfolio than there is in the farmers.
Well, I think
Yeah, but
you play on the U.S. through subsidies. Okay, it may keep the smaller farms going for longer, but the big farms just put it into war chests and get bigger, and that because they don't necessarily need it to operate.
But and get bigger. That what I'm saying is they put it into an investment somewhere to grow the farm.
So, yes, but you don't always know the timing of that, Evan. So if there's a good opportunity, yes, absolutely.
But
yeah,
how many sit back and wait for an opportunity, and how many actually go after? That's my question.
it will. Yeah, you've for sure got to make your own opportunities. But realistically, on the heavy balance sheet, on the overweighted balance sheet, all this excess capital sitting in the farm just gets turned into things they buy that they don't need and don't make them any money. That's my argument for getting it over. And then have a separate debate of what you do with the war chest. Whether you give it to Warren Buffett and say, Buffett, you only got 30 more years. You only got 30 more years left in your career, but I think you're doing pretty good with money. I'm going to entrust you with running that for a while, or give it to your stockbroker, or whatever. What the family wealth goes into while it's being built up to attack on the next opportunity. That's a separate debate based on time horizon and liquidity. but don't turn it into spare combines and recreational farm machinery.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying some of the top producers, they will go out and they'll start businesses and they'll find other ways to make a return, not fancy combines and like that. We're on the same page there. Trust me. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah.
Click here.
No. I agree. I think that's the risk of leaving it in the business is that if it gets easy to add that combine when you're running the 100-bushel wheat crop. And I think that plan is key when it comes to excess capital and matrix, because then you can have an idea to say, you pull it out, you set it aside, you put it into something waiting for that opportunity rather than turning it into something that you don't need that actually then negatively impacts your business.
And so as the token old guy on the call, I'll argue with your other entrepreneurs that want to start a business until you got a busy young family, you got kids in soccer, and you got kids in football, and you got kids playing baseball, and you're running to town, you got kids in different activities, and you're 45, not 25 anymore. And I would argue most of my farm operations do not have enough capacity at the management level to take their eye off the ball of their core business to get stretched on focusing on a separate side business. I'd want the capital. Other than in rare circumstances, I'd prefer the capital be stored in a passive manner so that it doesn't take more management time and brains, because lots of the producers are run off their feet as it is in between life and business.
So I think you're letting them off the hook then. I think you need to focus on the fact that they haven't set up their business in a way that allows them to manage it correctly.
See,
Conclusion.
Usually I'm the bad guy, and you're the angry mean today. Rich, fire away. Help me out.
Well, that's why I invited Rich on today, is because Rich has been around me long enough that these are the concepts I believe in. I believe that if you have that self-managing farm, you can go to all your kids' baseball games. You can start another business, because guess what? Todd, how many times have we seen Christian in the last 6 months since very ever? It's that concept that we're trying to get through to agriculture, is that you don't have to always equate expansion to more work and more hours. If you can do it correctly and believe in the business side, entrepreneurs can start multiple businesses and it's passive income. You just have to believe you can do it and actually have the education and the forthright and the goal to do it. And I'm making the pitch easy, guys. It's not easy.
Rich, fire away. You're in my camp or you're in Evan's camp?
I'm a little bit in Evan's camp. I mean, I'm in your camp traditionally. I thought Christian, I heard him. I mean, obviously he can sell ice to an Eskimo, but like he's played it, he's done it too. So I was really intrigued by that. And like to see him step back and let these things run has been fascinating. And I think that's that entrepreneurial spirit that's positive for agriculture in some senses. And, Rob and do is one of the things he says, and we're kind of trying to do that in our operation the same. So yes, there's room for some operations to do that, but it's like you say, Evan, not easy.
It's not easy.
Nope. It isn't easy, and young Christian wouldn't have old Christian is going to have less piss and vinegar than young Christian, and so the one thing that I want to make sure, I'm all for expanding our capabilities and making sure we train and empower people. I live that in our ag team. Used to be 3 people in M&P South Sask, and now Regina, and now we're 40. So I truly believe that. But one thing we can't ever do is we can't be 80% as good as 80% of okay at production is no substitute for perfection, because we're in a commodity business, and that last 10% of yield and 10% of price. Well, Christian's 5% model. The last 5 to 10% has a big impact on the bottom line. And so when we're doing this, challenging ourselves, we've got to make sure we stay perfect on the operation next.
No, Dean, that's exactly right, because the standard has to be the standard, even through expansion, and it's difficult to replicate that maybe without the patriarch, if you will, or yeah, That's fair.
Because I want the last word here before I ask the final question. Dean, it's a Thursday morning and you're in Toronto, and I'm pretty sure the doors are not falling off the MNP office in Regina right now. You have created a team that allowed you to do what you're doing today. Right?
Yeah, that's not fair argument, using that my own opportunities against me right in the podcast. my own arguments. Yeah. I got, usually I'm the bad guy in these calls now. Evan's now the
You had a good morning. You called me in a good morning.
yeah, fabulous. Yeah, my team does a great job.
Your team does
No, it's not my
an
team.
exceptional job. The team in Regina does an exceptional job. I'll give you a shout out for that one. Okay. Final 3 questions, one for each of you. Rich, with where the U.S. market is today and everything going forward, what is your plan for next year? How are you gonna continue the expansion? Where are you most excited, I guess, going forward for your operation, not just the agriculture?
Yeah. So we've raised a new variety of chickpeas that are a domestic market. They're using them in protein, adding protein. So like there's little nuanced markets that are kind of popping up, and I'm excited to kind of be a part of those and kind of get away from all this tariff stuff and export commodity.
Perfect. Mr. Klippenstine, how and what is M&P preparing for conversations with producers this fall? How are you getting ready to talk to guys? What's your core message, I guess, going forward? And
I think
at M&P, I guess, for the partner group.
well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get, before, if people ask how they're doing, we had to give them anecdotal examples of how they're doing relative to their peers, right? With things like Farmer Coach and M&P's ag benchmarking, we can give them tangible examples of how they're doing in their area versus their friends and peers in the neighborhood. And that's not to pick on people; it's to make them know what the art of the possible, right? How that if you're an avid weightlifter, Evan, and if you worked out with people who were not stronger, not faster, not better shape than you, there's nothing to push you, nothing to strive for. And if a grower, if Rich is living in a bubble and he grows 30 bushel lentils, 30 bushel chickpeas, and he thinks he's all that in a bag of chips, and he doesn't know his neighbor's growing 42, having that knowledge and knowing where to strive for, and not everyone's going to have every solution for everything, but cheat off of each other and steal the best points of each farm and make them all better. I think that's our main goal, and we're just at the infancy of this. That we're going to be able to say, here's where you rank, and then the next is, how do I help go to the next level and improve that? And that's something our whole industry, the 4 of us included, have to work towards, how we actually farmer coach people into improvements.
Yeah. So I could just dovetail off that real quick, Dean. That's exactly what I think is so optimistic about agriculture, is actually reaching out for help along the way, because traditionally it's been you just do it yourself and work harder. And I think that's a mindset shift that's happening, and it's going to be powerful.
And Todd, you've obviously been talking to some lenders since you came over to Maverick and all that side. I want your banker approach of what do you think 2025, 2026 look from a lending, and what guys can do to get ahead of it, or what they can do to gain some traction on these opportunities, I guess would be.
Yeah. So I think that there's a few questions in there. So I think first and foremost, you got to know where you're sitting. You got to know where you're at. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people on a cash flow crunch. Bankers are going to be faced with lots of bulge requests, operating money requests, increases. And there may be a couple reasons for that. They may be that somebody isn't taking a lentil contract right now. They have a contract that just isn't moving. They may want to hold and play the markets because they haven't contracted in these. So I think that I think the banks are really going to have to lean into what's their plan. Is it a hope and a prayer? Should they be moving some now? What is their plan on marketing? And so I think that there's going to be immediately cash flow. I think that immediate needs right now are going to be all around cash flow. What does the fall look like moving into the spring? And I think that's where the banks are going to be fairly busy. And then, as I said before, we see rigid dates on the input financing programs that we have. Those are generally like a February, March repayment. That gets to be a bit of a cash crunch as well. So just making sure people are paying attention to that, understanding cash flow. There's no surprises there. And then I think moving forward, I just can't stress enough to work with your bank, to talk to them about your plan. Where are you at right now? What are you looking for? What opportunities might you be interested in? So it's not a blind side. Everybody's on the page. Because if your banker knows about these up front, even in a tighter time, I think they're a lot more willing to work with you. If they can have that in the back of their mind, they might be able to start setting up some facilities for you and understanding that cash might be tight today. But I think that, good farms are good farms. There's years where margins are compressed. And banks generally are looking at things, you're not generally as good as your last year. There's kind of a 3-year, everybody does it a little bit differently. So one bad year isn't gonna change necessarily their opinion. And if you've been a good farm with a proper capital structure, I think that your bank is going to do a lot of good things for you through this time.
And proactivity, right? Like coming out of this, have your numbers, like go to them early. Don't wait until you get your numbers 2 months after your end and you're a week away from having to pay a bill. And like that's the important part is the banks want your client relationship managers in the credit department. They want some time to get this and do it right. And then if you leave them a week, it's not going to happen.
They view themselves as a partner in your business. They really do. They want to help. I think, whether it's perfect or not, but their intentions are good and they do want to help you. And the first question your bank's going to ask right now is, I need a post-harvest. If you're looking for something right now, so have those prepared. Like make sure that you have all your numbers as up-to-date of information as you can possibly have, because they're going to be asking for it. And I think proactivity is 100%.
Okay. So since I've probably dug myself into a few bad comments after this one, I'll walk it back a little bit. So I get to work with some really strong growers, and Rich being one of them, and Christian, and obviously our whole consulting group. The farms we work with are because I enjoy working with them. So that's where the passion comes from, guys, is I'm watching these farms do the things I'm saying. And it's not from me. They're doing them and I'm using what they're doing to share with everybody else. They're opening other businesses. They're finding time to go with their kids. They're doing mergers and acquisitions between each other. I got 2 40-year-old farms that are joining because they feel there's bargaining power. There's more time, having more at the leadership level. I mean, having Todd on board and all the other Maverick employees that have joined us in the last few months, it's been awesome. It's allowed me to step back and not believe I have to do everything. So that's where the management style and the comments come in, is that I think, guys, the stress goes down if you're able to actually build that team. And we call it self-managing, call it whatever you want. It really does allow you to grow and with less stress. And we've seen that productivity happen throughout the Farmer Coach program, throughout Maverick. And honestly, Dean, a lot of your client base has really strong teams. Let's be fair. They've hired good people, they're family members, they go to programs, they're educated. Those are all things that we're trying to push in the industry. And they might come across as, I did this stuff on my own. I didn't. I've learned all this from the people I surround myself with, which is what we talked about. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people. So there, I walked it back.
No, you did. Yeah, no, you're right though, because Mike Jolly told me once, and Mike's a good buddy of mine, farms down in Mossbank, does a great job. He told me his farm is easier to run at 12,000 acres than it was at 6, right? Because then he got a labor pool, and it's not about the magic size. It was just he got it properly capitalized with humans. The guys and gals working with him made his life easier. So no, I don't like to admit it, but you're right, Evan. We need to think around that.
Now, if you got any complaints, please reach out. My email is dean.quitno. Okay. Yeah. Remember to like, share, subscribe, comment. And thank you for watching, and thanks, guys, for joining me today. And that is The Truth About Ag. Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.